Hello, class. We are glad to have you for another class that gives you a brief story in the Bible. And we wanted to thank a couple of other listeners who got in touch with us and whose parents communicated with us to let us know they were listening. Emma, Reese, and Maddie, along with Jude and Noli and Iris. And we thank you for listening along with all the other listeners that we've mentioned before. And we have been talking about the book of Judges. And boys and girls, you'll remember our cycle of the book of the Judges. The cycle of the book of the Judges. The first step is the people sin and do evil in the eyes of the Lord. They sin and do evil in His sight. And usually by worshiping idols, by worshiping other gods. And when they sin, the Lord hands them into an enemy's hand, gives them to an enemy's hand who mistreats them, who makes their life horrible, who oppresses them. They sin, they are punished, and then in the midst of that punishment, they cry out to God and they beg God's deliverance and they beg God's mercy. They cry to God and the Lord raises up a deliverer. And we see all that cycle as we start Judges chapter 4. In Judges 4, the people sinned and did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And the Lord gave them into the hand of a king who oppressed them. He was Jabin, king of Hazor. And he had a military commander named Sisera. Now, do you recognize the name Jabin, king of Hazor? I bet Ezra does, because you know he was king of Hazor back in Joshua 11. Apparently, Jabin is some kind of name of a dynasty. And what this shows us is some of the areas that Israel conquered before, like in Joshua 11, are being retaken by their enemies. And their enemies are once again setting up their kingdoms. Now, I want you to see Jabin's 900 iron chariots. We have a picture of those iron chariots. Remember, chariots were the most powerful weapons in that day and time. And he has 900 iron chariots to oppress and mistreat Israel. And Israel's life was bitter. It was bitter. And they cried out to God. The only good thing about a bitter life is sometimes it leads people to turn to God. When life is difficult, where else can we turn except to Him? And the Lord raises up a judge by the name of Deborah, who sat under a palm tree. She sat under a palm tree like this, and she rendered judgments. And people came to her, and she pronounced judgments for the people. But Deborah is also a prophetess. And she calls a military man by the name of Barak, or Barak. She calls him to meet with her and says, I want you, Barak, to go up and gather 10,000 soldiers from Zebulun and Naphtali. 10,000 soldiers. And you bring them to Mount Tabor. And the Lord is going to give you victory over Sisera and all his iron chariots. You know what Barak said? He said, I will go if you go with me, Deborah. And Deborah said, the Lord is going to give your enemy into your hand. But because you said that you wouldn't go unless I went with you. Because he failed to obey the Lord completely. He said, you will receive no glory in this battle. But the honor of killing Sisera will go to a woman. Now, Barak gathers 10,000 soldiers from Zebulun and Naphtali and from various other tribes who came to their aid, and they gathered on Mount Tabor. Now, it seems like, from reading some things in Judges 5, that the Lord sent a storm that led the Kishon River to overflow, and as a result, some of these chariots, iron chariots of the enemy, are rendered ineffective in this battle. But here in this battle, there's no way that these 10,000 men could stand against the vast forces of Jabin and Sisera and all their many iron chariots. There doesn't seem to be any way, but the Bible says the Lord gave His people victory in Judges 4:14, that God subdued the enemy in 4:15. And Barak and his forces are victorious. And Sisera, the military commander, has to leave his chariot and flee to find a place to lodge, a place to hide, because Barak is chasing him down. And he finds a place to go, boys and girls. Sisera is running away from Barak, and he goes to the tent of a woman by the name of Jael, who is the wife of Heber the Canaanite. Now, Sisera and Jabin were on good terms with Jael, but Jael has ties to the Israelites through her husband and through Moses' family. And she says to Sisera, come in to my tent. Now, we have with us today the tent of Jael. The tent of Jael. And what happened is Sisera is worn out from the battle. War can make you tired, boys and girls. And he's very, very tired. And he goes into the tent and he lies down. And she covers him. And he says, do you have any water? And she pours out for him some milk and gives him some milk. And he says to her, you stay at the door of the tent. And if anyone comes, you tell them that nobody's here, because they're coming to look for me. And you keep me safe and protect me. So he drinks that milk and he goes to sleep. He's worn out from the battle. But when he goes to sleep, Jael goes over and gets one of these. And she takes a tent peg and she sneaks up to Sisera. And she goes up to Sisera gently, smashes the tent peg in his head. Now, I know, boys and girls, we don't like to see people die. But remember, he was an evil man who oppressed God's people and made their lives miserable. And God was bringing an end to a wicked man. When Barak is chasing Sisera, Jael says, I want you to come, see if I've got the man you're looking for. And he shows him Sisera dead with a tent peg in his hand. Remember how Barak was told by Deborah that you're going to win this victory, but because you didn't trust God, you're not going to get the honor. You're not going to get the glory. The honor of killing Sisera is going to go to a woman. And indeed, that happens. That happens in Judges chapter 4. And God subdued Jabin and Sisera. Judges 5 records a great song celebrating this victory, the victory that God has given. And in Judges chapter 5, we see a sad picture of Sisera's mother looking for him to come home, wondering why he's taking so long. But the Bible ends, Judges 5 ends with saying, let all the enemies of God perish like he. May those who oppose God will be brought down, and may we not be among them. Thank you for watching. Get your parents to read to you from Judges 4 and 5. And God bless you. Till next time.